Yes, everyone, you know what time it is. It's your boys Jack and Dave here to deliver you the podcast. I'm about to head on a flight later, so I thought I'd get all of this sort of Spurs, anxiety and Spurs sort of nonsense out of my system with Dave here. Dave is basically burdened to listen to all of my rants about everything from Ryan Sessegnon and Eric Dyer to the players arriving today. Some pretty decent topics lined up for today. So everybody, if you haven't already, please smash that like button. Solomon's transfer, man, that did arrive though today. I thought we maybe just have a quick chat because I think you and I have sort of said things maybe separately, right? I've given the scout report. You gave him the big welcoming on behalf of the Irish Hotspur, but I'm not sure if we really spoke at the same time, Dave, really about this Monor Solomon transfer. And a lot of people have kind of, at least my impression is that they seem a bit underwhelmed, maybe the general fan base sort of, or at least they're not that excited about it. I don't expect them to be. It's not like it's a James Madison signing or like, a future big center back signing totally, but this is still a player that technically we still, or a position really that we needed to sign for. I know it's not the most priority, but I think it actually still was kind of a necessary signing because we had the departure of Steven Bergwijn last season. We had the departure of Lucas this season, as well as Arnett Danjuma as well. I think and also Jack Clark, I believe we even sold. So we've actually been kind of shifting on like a few amount of wingers. And Brian Hill, of course, his future is maybe slightly, still up in the air. We maybe don't have as many backup wingers or as many sort of rotational options in those sort of kind of winger areas than maybe we might realize. And in my opinion, Monor Solomon sort of kind of gives us what we've been looking for that kind of alternative to maybe a Sonny, somebody who's still quite young, right? Can do a lot of developing, isn't kind of for the here and now, but is also still kind of relatively proven himself to be kind of an interesting, kind of similar type player to a Sonny, but also maybe slightly different. I think Monor Solomon, at least in my opinion, won't have that sort of electric pace in behind that Sonny will have, and also that maybe that keen nature to kind of get on the last man's shoulder. But similar to Sonny, though, he's a goal scoring kind of left winger and a guy that likes to be able to create his, goals for himself, has a pretty good finish on him by the looks of things, too. He's scored some pretty great goals against Real Madrid in the past when he played over at Shakhtar. Obviously scored some absolute bangers for Fulham last season. But I think what's interesting, Dave, is that he has some similarities to Sonny and then also maybe plays slightly differently to Sonny at the same time, but then not like Harvey Barnes, who I believe is already like 25, 26, and is also going to cost a lot of money. Somebody like Monor Solomon, free transfer, won't exactly be starting game one. I don't think he's expecting to be starting game one either, but he will be, I think, for the future, a very good challenge to Sonny, as well as kind of someone who won't be completely different, but also slightly different, which actually, if that makes any sense, is what we're sort of looking for.
I get what you're saying. I'll expand on that in a second, Jacko. First of all, I just want to say the reason why I don't think there's been as much hype or hysteria around the signing is you've made a massive signing in James Madison, so it's not at that level. B, the club put up one Hotspur memberships and ticket prices, so double whammy to fans, which taints any sort of celebration going forward. But also, when you're linked with Van de Ven and Tapsoba, and we know we need centre backs.
Correct.
I think that's why the hysteria isn't around that signing, but also because it was announced like 2 weeks ago. We all knew it was going to happen. It was just a matter of time. Look, when it comes to Solomon, Jack, and also, look, as well, because he's on a free, right? It'd be aimed at the club, typical Tottenham free transfer. And I get that to a degree, because let's be honest, if there was a fee involved, I don't think Tottenham would have brought him in. I think the fact that he is free, they use that opportunity to get him in here, which, look, I would argue, smart piece of business, right? When it comes to Monor Solomon, right, I think he gives you what Sonny gives you in terms of likes to get on the ball, especially out left, cut inside, unleash a shot, right? But where he differs to Sonny, which I think what you were alluding to is, Jack, his son likes to stay high and wide. Monor Solomon, if you actually look at a lot of his best work at Fulham, at Shakhtar Donetsk, it's actually a lot deeper than what Sonny is. Yeah. Last season, when we were asking Sonny to sort of drop deep on the halfway line, get the ball, get turned and play, it's not his game. But the season before that, when you were putting Sonny in behind constantly or getting the ball to his feet and letting him do damage, that's his game. So we're bringing in Monor Solomon. If you do need someone to drop deeper to get on the ball, get turned and play, you have that option. Where I do think Monor Solomon has a bit more to do, Jack, is I think he needs more goals and assists in terms of output to reach anywhere near Sonny's level. He has to give me more in that department. But also, a lot of people be like, Well, he only turned up for a few games at the end of the season towards Fulham. Okay, but anyone that actually goes and does research into the guy will find out the guy was injured from the first game of the season up until January 2023. And then
Yeah,
when he
it's
did
huge.
come back in, he helped Fulham through a difficult period, while contributing. So for me, and this guy has a lot of raw talent, by the way.
And hit the
So
ground running after that injury, if I recall, too.
100%. And look, you got to understand this guy's career has sort of been curtailed by what's going on with Ukraine and Russia, with the injury and that as well. It's you look at Mudryk, very highly rated. His career has sort of been curtailed
Mhm.
by everything that's gone on as well. So, for me, I think it's a smart signing by Tottenham. I think Ange will get him up and running. I think if Ange does stick to the wide winger system that he had at Celtic, I think Solomon will have to learn to play higher up the pitch and get on that ball and keep his weight. But all in all, Jack, I think it's actually a better signing than what most people would give it credit for.
Yeah, especially with what you kind of mentioned there, with the fact that he can maybe drop deeper and being able to sort of, take that burden away from Sonny from last season, because we just didn't really have any winger that could sort of drop deep in that left wing position and pick up the ball. And so we were then asking Sonny to do it. It was also part of Conte's tactics, don't get me wrong, but like you said, it didn't exactly play to all of Sonny's strengths. Whereas now we can sort of be able to play to Sonny's strengths if need be, but then also have somebody that we can develop who can maybe bring something slightly different. And I think if anybody is questioning whether Solomon can drop deep, like Dave said, go and watch back some of his goals that he scored in the Champions League for Shakhtar Donetsk, because most of the time those moves start from very deep positions, very deep sort of counterattacking type positions where they invited on a lot of pressure from the opponent, and then just 1-2 quick passes. And it actually usually did start from sort of a Mon or Solomon type, kind of move that he would
Yeah.
usually get past his man with either, a quick first touch, or he would spin his man with receiving the ball. And then all of a sudden, Shakhtar would usually be 3-on-1, 3-on-2 situation. And usually these moves, like Dave is saying, started from very deep positions and actually sort of relied on one of their kind of tricky wingers like a Tete or like a Solomon to sort of beat their man. And then all of a sudden, with kind of the pace and that sort of dynamism that they have, then kind of, punish them from there. And what I would say too about Solomon is that he sort of has that low center of gravity, a bit like what I would say Eden Hazard had. And no way, I don't think is he going to be probably nearly as good as Eden Hazard was in the Premier League. But at the same time, if you're looking for, that sort of dribbling style, and also this is what Solomon actually rates his best even when he was interviewed, when he was asked kind of what his strengths were, he said, yeah, dribbling. I like to take my man on. I like to make things happen. And what you would say is he has a very similar sort of kind of shifty, very low center of gravity, and also close control to what Eden Hazard did. And also Eden Hazard, as we both know, was very skillful off of the left wing and sort of cutting inside and being able to create for others, as well as also even hitting it from distance and being able to score a goal too. And I think that's what's going to be interesting about Solomon, is that nowadays you're getting a lot of sort of creative wingers. I think actually the creative side of his game, he might need to work on a little bit, because I think he's good at creating for others by, getting past his man. But does he have that real ball in behind, or does he have that real eye for a pass? I'm not too sure yet. But what we can tell is that he actually has a decent finish on him, because some of the goals he has scored, he's been able to bury them with some confidence. They did not look like lucky finishes. They looked like very well hit, sort of shots, as well as also shots that fooled the goalkeeper in a few scenarios as well. I think even again, if you look back at his goals that he scored against Real Madrid, kind of on both scenarios, he actually fooled Courtois with kind of a nice near post finish and sent him the wrong way. And it was actually quite deadly. I think on one of them was a real finish that you were like, yeah, no one's saving that type of thing. And so that's where I would say he's slightly similar to Sonny, in that maybe he has sort of that eye for a finish, or sort of that clever, kind of composure when, in those situations, kind of like Sonny has always had, that ability to kind of calm things down once inside the box and just sort of put it away with kind of a bit of ruthlessness. And I think that's what Solomon actually has in similarity to Sonny.
Spot on, Jack. And he also, look, people are like, we obviously think, he's going to be mainly used as sort of backup or impact sub to maybe Sonny and that. But he can also play through the middle and play on the right-hand side as well. He actually gives you an option the whole way across that front sort of, that front line for Ange Postecoglou, which is absolutely crucial. If that creativity from Maddison perhaps gets lost, you might see Man or Solomon step in there. Over on the right-hand side, you might see him come on for Kulu. But one of the biggest things is, Jack, and there is a narrative around that this guy's an impact sub, and I can understand that. Me personally, I don't think that's the case. But just let's take for say he predominantly he might be used at the start as an impact sub at Tottenham. But what are we moaning about? Last season, we had to play Sonny through injury because we had no other options. We couldn't let him go and get his operations that he needed. And it ended up affecting his performances, which affected Tottenham Hotspur. How many times we're sitting there in games, it's not working out. It's like make attacking changes. Okay. Well, you've got you players on the bench. What do you want the manager to do? Last season, the majority of our benches throughout the whole season consisted of sometimes 2 to 3 goalkeepers, defenders, wing backs, and centre midfielders. We had
or one or
barely
two attackers.
if with Charlison, if even at times, had barely
Yeah.
any attacking options off the bench. And it killed us, We weren't able to mix things up. It hampered other players, playing them through when they weren't fit. Even Kulo, I'd argue, we brought him back early from his injury, and he never sort of recovered properly and got back to the levels we're used to. So for me, I think it's a good piece of business, and we need them options. Even if it does come as an impact sub, we need them players off the bench. When was the last time we had a real impact sub? People might say to me, oh, Dave Lucas Moura, but I would argue that equally, as much as he done off the bench in terms of helping Tottenham, I'd equally say he's often done as much to hamper Tottenham, Liverpool, that game against Everton where he got sent off, etc. But what we do need is a guy that's hungry off the bench to make an impact. And Manor Solomon will be that guy. I think it's a good piece of smart business all around that still allows us to do the business in the centre-back area, which is the most important in this team.
I think the message we're just trying to say here is that it's understandable that maybe it's not a signing that everybody's just going to get super hyped up about, but don't write it off either. Don't consider it also sort of a Levy signing, if anything. Like, it's actually, I think, quite a clever signing by Spurs. It makes a lot of sense. I think it makes more sense than actually bringing in someone like a Harvey Barnes would have been. I think it's actually quite a clever one if you were to compare it to that, let's say, for example. But maybe just a huge switch of gears here, everybody. But last night,
I didn't want to talk about this today, by the way. I didn't.
No, this was forced upon us. They forced our hand here. And to be honest, you're probably not surprised that we had to, bring this up, but I think the Eric Dyer PR machine is actually hard at work once again there, Dave. And it sort of felt like, it was getting some rumblings of it at some stage. We were hearing rumors about sort of the new contract. And then also as well, then we were hearing rumors about, him having that injury all of a sudden that no one knew about. And then you were sort of like you said, Dave, if he really was a serious injury of any kind, then why didn't Spurs actually go for a center back in January like they could have? But also, too, he's kind of come back to Hotspur way nice and early, doing the ropes, just has made it clear also as well, even though when Spurs sort of indicated, at least in the media, we were getting some indications that Spurs weren't really that keen on keeping him around, even though we did get some, it was kind of back and forth between the contract rumors and whether he was actually going to stick around or not. But then we kind of got the go ahead from Dyer that he actually did not want to leave Spurs and has, made it quite clear that he wants to try to impress Ange Postecoglou and stick around. It just, and we did a prediction, I think, a while ago, Dave. I think Eric Dyer is staying. I think we sadly came to that conclusion that we think he is staying. But my problem is that it feels like they're now just forcing it down our throat, with this sort of Eric Dyer video that's coming out. And the audacity, I feel like, to do it as well, considering they know that he is obviously a very divisive player, I think, in the fan base. There are a lot of people like ourselves that sort of, kind of talk about him pretty much all the time when it comes to the problems with the defense. We do find him to be one of the main culprits of it. And then you have others that, maybe try to stick up for him and try to stand up for him. But he's always been, I think, a pretty divisive, sort of figure, I think, in the fan base about whether he's actually good enough for this team. And I'm just shocked to see that the club has actually decided to put out any sort of documentary about him, considering the fact that most of maybe the fan base, if not 50% of the fan base, I imagine, would like to see him sold this summer.
Jack, we're not surprised. Look, let's be honest. We knew it was coming. We spoke about all season long. Rumors about the new contract coming back early from, for pre-season, supposedly playing through an injury. We said it all along. The club are gearing us up for something towards Eric Dyer. And this is it. I'm just fed up of it. I don't want to see it. In fact, I'm actually not going to watch it. What are they going to title it? From Lisbon to Tottenham, my sob story. I fucking had enough of it. You even look at the trailer, how he found it hard at Lisbon, how he found it hard at Tottenham. Newsflash, you find it hard because you're not good enough. I don't care if you give me your best and everything else. You're just not good enough. And no sentimentality either, because he is trying his hardest to hold on to his weekly wage at Tottenham. That's all he's doing. He's in no rush to go anywhere. We should be forcing him out the door. I get people will go, oh, but Dave, Lucas Moura got one. He didn't sign a new contract. Maybe it's a farewell video. I don't care. What did he do for the club? Why does he deserve a farewell video? There's fans out there that deserve more of a video or a promo documentary than what this twerp does. I've absolutely had enough of it. Why are they going to show us a full hour of a catalogue of his fucking errors? I've had enough.
I'd argue Lucas deserved one more than even Eric Dyer did, to be fair, even if you think neither of them really deserved, any sort of documentary.
None of them are about greatness. None of them are about achieving anything. They're all sub stories, this, that, and the other, and I've had enough of it. But don't get me wrong, it's nice that, in the broader football world, we're starting to see these documentaries. We had one about Sonny before, this, that, and the other, right? And I get it. It's nice to see, but only for the winners. I don't care about these losers. I really don't. I want to see behind the scenes on how people achieve greatness. I don't want to hear, oh, I found it hard here and I found it hard there. And even at the end of the trailer, he talks about, I want to be remembered for the person I am. Of course, you're not going to be remembered for your football, are you? You know what I mean? It's so easy to sit there and say, I want to be remembered for the person I am after you've had nothing but a shit football career. Jesus Christ, I'm fed up with all this PR stuff. And then also, the club have thrown Dyer under the bus here. Complete poor timing. I've walked the whole fan base up to this fraud, and even to the point now where I didn't even make them up, by the way. But all over social media, you see, do you know the Leave Out posters? They change it to Dyer.
Dyer out.
Fans have made their voices heard. Why are you putting this out there, angering him even more? Dyer has been off the back of his worst season ever at Tottenham Hotspur, committing mistakes left, right, and centre and all around him. And this is the shit they want to pump out to you. Sometimes I question, is the guy in the PR room or fucking someone up in the board level, secret Arsenal fan, that is using this as an experiment to see how far they can really push Tottenham fans before they break. I've had enough of it. There's also a narrative around, and what it is as well, right? I have no doubt this will be used to soften people up so that when Dyer gets a new contract, they'll do it. Like they talk about his sickness. That was way back in the Pochettino days, ages ago. You know, he's had 4 years of football since then. What has he done? I guarantee you they won't show the part from the Amazon All or Nothing documentary where Jose Mourinho brought me in to ask him why he wasn't playing under Pochettino, and he threw Pochettino under the bus and blamed Pochettino for it. Guarantee you they won't show that. I'm absolutely fed up with it. There's always this narrative painted around this guy. And by the way, it's working because you already see people soften up to it. There's always a thing around this guy. Well, this manager has wanted him, Jose's wanted him, Conte's wanted him, Nuno's wanted him. And that, they haven't asked for centre-backs. They didn't demand for centre-backs. I get bored of it. Jose Mourinho asked for centre-backs. He got Joe Rodon. Conte asked for centre-backs. He got Langley in on loan. So if you're any manager and you've gone up and said, okay, the defence isn't good enough, we need good defenders in here. And then come the start of the season, you turn around and you've got to pick between, okay, Romero walks in. But then to partner him, you have to pick between Dyer or Sanchez. You're always going to pick Dyer, aren't you? Because Sanchez can't even stay on his feet. Can't even wear goods. So of course you're always going to pick Dyer. But when are we going to put an end to this whole charade? He was an average player during a very average time at Tottenham. Fuck him off. Get in Van de Ven and Tapsoba, and let's go and get back to the Tottenham that we know. I'm sick to death of this club softening the fan base up for these below par average footballers who have a bigger ego and think they're a lot better than what they are. You know, Sanchez, the whole thing about Sanchez just showed me it yesterday. Sanchez was bought up back under Pochettino 4 or 5 years ago at this football club. Has only ever been a backup. If I was in his situation, no matter what Galatasaray offered me, I would want to sign on that dotted line and get out and play football if football was my first priority.
I think part of the thing that needs to be brought up, though, too, is that a lot of incomings have been needed in that back line, but with the incomings need to be outgoings. And it's clear that the outgoings are harder almost maybe than the incomings when you have Eric Dyer, Sanchez, Davies, so many of these players that really aren't that keen on leaving. It makes it very difficult to actually shift on, a bunch of center backs. They're all just sort of sticking around, and they're all on really big long-term contracts. That sort of means that they can kind of force their own, stay. They can force, themselves to stick around unless the coach really goes out of his way to make them clear that he doesn't want them around. And also to bring up that is that I feel like with Eric Dyer, Sanchez, Davies, etc., Dave, is that if they really did, want those moves, like you said, they would have gotten them a while ago because for the most part, a lot of them have been kind of backups or have been kind of more rotational options really at Spurs and haven't really ever convinced, really too much. Maybe you would say Ben Davies more than the rest, but even still, it's not really that convincing at the end of the day what he's actually done here at this football club. And so it is, says a lot about the fact that if even Daniel Levy accepts a bid of 9 million, 10 million from a club, who's to say that these guys will even accept the terms to actually go to that club that, they've been accepted a bid for? And I know Daniel Levy, we've, said in the past, right? He's probably over evaluated these players and has given, maybe too many opportunities to them, but also as well, when maybe he has received bids for players in the past, he's decided that maybe, what, I can squeeze a few extra million out of it, and then ends up, that we can't get rid of some of these players. I also do feel like it's not just Daniel Levy in this case. It could be on top of that, the fact that these guys, like you said, don't actually really want to leave. So if you're kind of combining the two factors of Daniel Levy, who's a tough negotiator and is going to probably squeeze as many millions as he can out of you for players that really aren't that good in the first place, and then also these players aren't really that keen on leaving and are probably going to be demanding some pretty high wages, doesn't really make them attractive options at all to any club whatsoever.
Do you know what? On just what you were saying there, Jacko. I mean, two things. First of all, why are the club promoting a player that we should be fucking selling, right? But second of all, Jacko, we're at this point again. Dyer has what, 1 year left on his contract, and you're hearing people go, "Well, if Ange wants him," but Harry Kane has 1 year left on his contract, and everyone sell, 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 sell. Why are we at this point again? Why do we keep doing this every single bloody summer long? Dyer contract coming to an end. Well, if fans want some, Harry Kane comes around. Now we need to sell, need to cash in, this, that, and the other. I'm absolutely fed up with it.
Another thing, though, to mention is that I feel like he, in the documentary, at least trailer of Eric Dyer, there are a few triggering moments when he said, every player is going to have a tough period, but he didn't say periods. He said period, singular. I mean, Eric Dyer has had plenty of tough periods. I wouldn't say he's had one tough period. It's been pretty tough for the most part, I think, his entirety of his Spurs career. Yes, he's had maybe some moments and some months, but he's had to switch positions multiple times. He's also not really convinced, I think, too much in any of the positions that he's really played in, I think, at Spurs either. I think he got found out as a right back. He got found out as a defensive midfielder. He's been found out as a center back, really. And I don't really even know what his best position is. It might be center back, but it really isn't that convincing. Another thing, too, was just the fact that he was staring into like a bonfire at the end was actually kind of funny because it was just sort of like he was staring into his Spurs career, if you ask me. And then also when he was sort of like talking about the accusations that he's received in the past, like, oh, is he focused on football, and making like a kind of a voice like that. It was just like, I don't think anybody's ever questioned whether Eric Dyer is focused on football or anything. I think people have just questioned whether Eric Dyer is actually a good enough footballer. Like, it doesn't really come down to his focus or his actual professionalism. It just comes down to whether you're actually good enough to be playing in this team. And that's what also I found a bit funny as well, is that I've never heard anybody question Eric Dyer's sort of, focus or anything. I think I've probably even said he's probably one of the parchiest players in this whole team. He's actually tried very hard, to keep in the team with either being up to date on the tactics or, very buddy with the, the players and being, a nice guy around the camp. He's found a lot of different ways to be a pretty well-liked guy, I think, in and around the dressing room. So I don't think it's actually him being distracted by football. I think it's just him, not being good enough simply as. And I think that's what we've kind of kept it for the most part. And then also, Dave, I just feel like the release of this and the timing of it is just pretty audacious, if you ask me. That's kind of my final point. I just find it to be like we said before, Lucas Moura. I mean, I don't think he was nearly as divisive as Eric Dyer is. Like, even the release of his probably own documentary wasn't nearly as divisive, or the timing of it wasn't as nearly as divisive. This just feels like the timing and everything. It's pretty audacious for me. That's my final point.
It's just absolutely outrageous, chap. But one thing you spoke about there where Dyer's like, moaning about some of the backlash he gets. When are these professional footballers actually going to get it? I'm sick of them hearing, crying about them. Oh, well, this is being said about me. That's being said about me. But you're paid exorbitant amount of money, which you accept, by the way, to perform at the highest level. And when you don't do that, People that are being charged the highest prices to go and watch a sport, expect them to have criticisms. It's an honor bestowed on you to represent this club. And all I'm hearing is moan, this, that, and the other. Take some responsibility. They're well able to take the money, but don't want to take all the responsibility that comes with it. And moan and cry about it. And I've had enough. And this has been something that has been common at Tottenham Hotspur for the last 3 to 4 years. We'll take all the money you have to offer us, but we'll take zero responsibility. And I've had an absolute enough of it. How about you realize your criticism comes from your performances? You don't want the criticism. You get in the gym, you work even harder, and you become even better. It's that simple. It's not rocket science. If you do not have that motivation, that's why you find yourself out in the press bitching and moaning about what the fans are saying, what this and that is saying. That's why. So stop it, first of all, with that. I've had enough of that. But also, I mean, I'm just fed up with it, Jack. I'm just absolutely fed up with this situation. I don't like clowning on players and this and that and the other. But at some point, you like, enough is enough with these guys. I've had enough, and at some point you've just got to move them on. I really just do not understand that. I think it's bad promo. I think it's bad PR. And I think the club have also thrown the guy under the bus as well. Don't get me wrong. But
That's fair.
I guarantee you, when I'm talking about players taking ownership, this is what I mean. I wonder, will they show up some of Eric Dyer's quotes? Because I know they already show pictures of papers, so they're going to show up stuff that were in the papers about the guy. Okay, pull up the ones he said about Jose Mourinho. Jose Mourinho trusted this guy. Jose Mourinho gave him the opportunity. Eric Dyer made a huge mistake against Liverpool, huge mistake against Chelsea and West Ham, all within the space of a month, right? Dropped from the team. Jose Mourinho gets sacked. Dyer comes back into the team under Money Mason. He gets asked, how do you think your season went? And he goes, well, I don't understand all the noise around me. I think it's been unfair. I think I've had a pretty good season. It's like, well, I mean, you don't get dropped if you're playing well, do you? So it's just like, I've absolutely had enough of it. The guy makes so many excuses, and it's just another excuse. Do you know what they should actually call it? Excuses why my career never turned out the way it did.
Another player, though, that I don't think is actually worth keeping around, and this is not really a gear change. I actually think this is a similar type conversation about players that just need to go, that I think we're just done with. And this is sad as it may be. Ryan Sessegnon, he's a young kid. He's a nice guy, kind of, I guess, like an Eric Dyer in a way, but he's just sort of somebody that's just not good enough. It's just simple kind of arguments, similar, as well. And the fact that he's just not really ever impressed. I don't think he's ever really had a consistent enough of a spell to really sort of keep a real spot in this squad. And I think he's sort of been living off of those few games that he had under Antonio Conte, where he was, very, very good defensively, pretty good going forward. But this last season really showed it for me. He was terrible going forward, terrible defensively, and also as well missed about, 19 games or something like that yet again. And it's just been a season or, a career at Spurs plagued with injuries, Dave. And I just think with Sessegnon, he was more expensive than even Emerson Royale was. I'm curious if Emerson Royale has already surpassed the amount of games that Sessegnon's even played for the club at this stage. And when you kind of put that into context, Emerson's already had probably, you would say, more impact at this football club than even Sessegnon has had. Makes you kind of think Sessegnon, I think, just needs to go. He's been here, I think, too long. He was one of the most expensive fullbacks we've actually brought in here. He's had to switch positions, I think, a few times. He sees himself as more of a left wing back. I think he's not good enough going forward to be a left wing back. He's actually probably more of a left back, if anything, at this stage. But I don't think he's good enough defensively even to be a left back. I don't even know if he's good enough for the Premier League, really. It'd be interesting to see, where his sort of level is, after what is, again, another injury. And he's going to be undergoing surgery. I don't know how long it's going to take or what the recovery period is, Dave, but I think it's also, again, on the hamstrings, or it's on a similar sort of area for him that's kind of been, hurting him throughout his career. I just think his career is over at Spurs. And this might sound harsh, and it's probably not going to actually happen, but still worth having the conversation about. I think Spurs actually got to rip up the contract, to be honest. Like the fact that he's just sat here on pretty decent wages, and then also as well has been plagued with injuries this whole time. He's been costing us wages, costing us medical bills, and he's a nice guy and everything, but he's just shown not to be good enough, and he's shown to be too consistently injured. So when you can't be available and you're not good enough, that's kind of a double whammy for me. I think you got to go.
What do you think it cost us more in wages or medical bills?
I mean, how much is really a hamstring, surgery? Probably not that far up there, probably there are more expensive surgeries around, I bet. But the fact that Dave, I mean, he's played probably more games and had more of an impact for Hoffenheim than he's ever had for
Mm,
Spurs. Like, that's what I sort of see it as. Like, his time at Spurs has just been
mm.
pretty much nothing, like, if you
Before
ask me.
before I actually get into Session, Jack, you brought up a point about Emerson, right? And do you know what? When I look at it, right, what Session has offered had to offer Tottenham compared to Emerson, but Emerson gets the hate he does, but yet Session constantly gets backers. And I've just sort of come to epiphany. The reason why I think something like that actually happens is because Session came in just off the back of us reaching the Champions League final, right?
Mm,
So sort of that love for Tottenham was still around in the air. Where someone like Emerson and others, and this is why I have a lot of respect for some of the new signings that have come in recently, especially after Steve Hitchens attempted rebuild. Because things have gone on so bad, if these guys don't hit the ground running, or even Kulu's case, he was written off before he even got here. It's because of the current climate around Tottenham Hotspur. So these guys mentally, have to be absolutely rock solid coming in here because they're
yeah.
automatically receiving the frustrations of the fan base. But the frustrations are being laid at the wrong people's door. Look, I get Session has been hard with it's been hard for him with the likes of injuries, this, that, and the other, and I get it. But why is there not more frustration to what this guy has offered Tottenham compared to Emerson and that? I do.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
something that is driving me insane over the last couple of seasons where new guys are coming in and being written off and guys that have been here. And you'd also say, if the guys come here that we brought in the first place done their job, we wouldn't be going into a second rebuild, right? So there should be
Yeah.
even more sort of less willingness towards these guys. But when it comes to Session Jack, look, he's offered nothing. I don't think the club know whether he's a left back, left wing back, or a left winger either. He's played in every
Yeah.
position since he's got here. But the reality is, the guy has regressed from when he was 17 years of age. Now, this new operation, supposedly, you're not going to have any more hamstring injuries because of it. I don't buy it, especially if
Yeah, I
it's
don't buy that.
at Tottenham. But also, Jack, the timing of it leaves him ruled out until after the summer transfer window closes. Now, the club won't rip up a player's contract due to injury. They never have done. They never will do.
It's harsh.
It's just the sort of club we are. We'll always try and help players through injuries, right? And look, I admire that to a certain extent, right? But if I was Sessi Young, I'd actually be going to Tottenham and I'd be saying, look, it's not working out. We know this. You were looking to offload me. I've had the injury. I don't think clubs aren't going to come in and buy him now that he's injured because he can't pass a medical, right? So that rules out a permanent move off the table for him. But if I was Session, I'd say, look, can we just mutually agree to terminate my contract? You don't have to pay me anything and just let me go and get on with my career elsewhere. You're not going to receive any
Yeah.
money if I'm injured. Let's just make that happen. Session is at the point where he actually needs to take onus on his own career. Stop being
Yeah.
dictated by money and by finances, etc., etc. Take onus on your own career and go and play football elsewhere and get your career back on track. That's what
Yeah.
I think would be the best solution for all. And I don't think, even if we don't do that and Session stays around, it should not disrupt us from doing our business. Because I get
Mm.
the argument where it's like, well, we still have to pay him wages and it's 15 million we could have got off him. Okay, great. But you hired the one Hotspur memberships. How much profit did you make off that? You've hired the
Yeah.
tickets for games. How much profit are you going to make off that? So therefore, it shouldn't actually stop Tottenham from doing business in that area. What is the point? If this guy is derailing Tottenham from doing business in that area, then what are we actually doing here as a football club? What is the actual
Mm.
ambition? Even with the Dyer documentary coming out, I thought we were going in for a new era at Tottenham Hotspur. New era means not making the same mistakes, not having
Mm.
this sentimentality. So even if he is injured, still do the business you were hoping to do in that area, regardless.
Yeah, I think another thing though too with Sessegnon is just the fact that Reguilon was brought in, I believe, after him. That's a big sign that maybe Spurs were losing confidence in the signing. Then Destiny Udogie was brought in after him. That's another sign that Spurs have been losing confidence in the guy. You sort of
And we
look at
kept
it
Ben
like,
Davies around.
and we've kept Ben Davies around. Even better point. He's also, again, let's remind ourselves, I believe the most expensive out of all of those. I think he was more expensive than even he could have been around the same price as Reguilon or almost similar price. Like I said, he was more expensive than Emerson. I think he was 27 million pounds or something like that. Or
Mhm.
Sessegnon, he was around that price. And then also as well, you look at sort of the Destiny Udogie signing was a bit of a steal actually when you look at the price that we brought in him in for too. So
Mhm.
Sessegnon, expensive, has not really made much of an impact at Spurs, has cost us, a lot of, I think, money in terms of medical bills as well. And I know that's something that probably doesn't really mean much at the end of the day. But I also just sort of see it as, like I said, if you're not making much of an impact in the games that you do even play, and then
Mhm.
also as well, you're on big wages as well as just never even available. It's kind of a bit of a double whammy. You either need to be available and be that guy that the manager can always count on being fit and being ready to come off the bench, or you got to be that guy that just when fit has that talent and that ability to make huge impacts in the game when you do come on. I think you have to be one or the other. And I don't feel like Sessegnon is one or the other right now. And I think probably a big wake up call for Spurs fans was whatever, was it Preston? It might have been Preston
Yeah,
this
it was
last
Preston.
season. And that game, I think, was a huge wake up call for
Yeah.
everybody because he wasn't injured. He actually, I believe, had a few games, off the bat, as well, where he was sort of like, wasn't really out of the lineup too much. He was,
Yeah.
he's getting in games here and there. And then he just had a real stinker in that game. And also, as well, just kind of showed to be sort of, a bit out of ideas actually in a lot of situations where he didn't know how to make the right pass to sort of just build out from the back. He didn't know what to do in one-on-one situations just to try to get a cross in. I think we were starting to kind of just lose our minds with how, hopeless he looked really at trying to get across into the box. It was just getting blocked and blocked and blocked and blocked by a League One defender.
He
Dave,
didn't
I
even
think
show enough
Sessegnon
trickery to beat him, though, Jack. He didn't show any trickery whatsoever to beat him. It was just the
is
same
very
thing
predictable.
every time. It was
Yeah.
just get the ball out of his feet, whack it off the guy in front of him. There was no trying to, show him, a few step overs, throw him off, this, that, and there's none. It was just basic.
If you compare it to how even Destiny Udogie, right, what we've seen him at Udinese, right, what's made him so good is that he does kind of both things. He can take it inside past his man. He takes it down the outside and does something special. Even like a Jed Spence, you would argue, still has that sort of, ability to just take
Mhm.
on his guy one-on-one. Even Emerson has shown the ability to take on his guy one-on-one from time to time with a bit of trickery. I think you're spot on about that. Sessegnon has just shown to be far too predictable, I think, in my
Mhm.
opinion, over his time here at Spurs. And that just sort of shows that, like I said, I think his level is sadly maybe not even the Premier
Mhm.
League. I think it's actually probably more championship. It could be, maybe someplace else, maybe outside of even England in general, where he can go and develop himself. Maybe one day in the future, after he has a few years without injury, he can come back to the Premier League and be able to show his true quality. But I think,
Mhm.
like I said, that game against Preston and maybe a few others from last season were real wake up calls for Spurs fans. It just showed
Mhm.
that he couldn't defend, couldn't attack, and he's too often injured. So
Mhm.
Sessegnon, if you ask me, if you wanted to be ruthless, I think you would rip up the contract. Just simple
Mhm.
as because you need more players in here that can actually do the job. We've also questioned who can actually come in here at left back
Mhm.
to be able to challenge Udogie or be able to play that left back position. Sessegnon at this stage has no future, I think, in that spot. Neither
Mhm.
does really a Ben Davies. So maybe not even a Reguilon. Looks like Reguilon doesn't have much of a future here. So I think,
Mhm.
definitely Sessegnon's probably got to go first.
And what's sad about it is, Jack, because I've not, when we first brought him in here, I was like, you know what, this could be the new Danny Rose, right? Danny Rose, when we brought him in from Leeds, he was a left winger. We sent him out on loan to develop his game at left back, left wing back, which is what we done, or left wing back, which is what we done with Session, right? We learned about to that team in Germany to get him used to that
Yeah.
position. However, the difference between him and Danny Rose is because we loaned Danny Rose out a good few times and he didn't make the Tottenham team until he was about 22, 23, 24 years of age. But he was out playing in the Premier League constantly,
Mm,
without disrupted by injury, whereas Ryan Sessegnon hasn't had that. We've tried to
hmm.
do what we've done with Danny Rose, but injuries have just held the guy back, held the guy back. And he's now 23 years of age. It's time to just part ways. It's
Yeah.
sad. Don't get me wrong. It's sad because of
He's a
injuries.
nice guy. He looks like a nice
It's,
guy.
it's it's not it's not out of his own doing, right, Jack? It's more out of injuries and stuff like that, right? And that's
Yeah,
what
I
makes
wouldn't question his
he's
focus. I
not.
wouldn't question his
Yeah,
motivation. I think he's just been plagued with injuries and been very
yeah.
unlucky by it. But it's also like similar to Eric Dyer and the fact that he's just not good enough at the same
Yeah,
time. Like, you just can't
100%,
make
man.
it.
And this
Yeah.
is the thing, we can't keep around with this sentimentality, trying to give people, 10, 15, 20 different chances. It's elite level sport. It's ruthless from at the very, very top. And if you want to be there, you've got to start acting like that. So,
Yeah.
although I don't think the club will rip up the contract, I do think there's a solution that we can all come to together on this.
Yeah. I think time for a bit of a bonus section here, and we're going to be talking about Harry Kane to PSG, everybody. So everybody, here, let me do that.
Can I lead off on Harry Kane one?
Yeah. You do the bonus set here. I'm going to edit. All right. Do you want to introduce the bonus section?
Yeah. Well, guys, that we're going to leave it there. That brings the end to the podcast today. Hopefully, you've really enjoyed some of the talking points that we've brought up today. A little bit more light-hearted, as you can see, maybe at times. But going forward, if there's anything you want to see me, myself, and Jack discuss on this podcast, please make it known in the comment section. But also, get your thoughts in the comment section. Make sure you smash that like button. Let's aim for 150 today. And if you are new, smash that subscribe button like 10,700 loyal, passionate Spurs fans have already done today. And now that Jack's got it off his chest, we won't see any more of them videos of someone trying to escape an aircraft while it's midair, So that's great. But look, thanks everyone for tuning in today. It really does mean a lot. We'll be back to a normal schedule as soon as Jack goes back, starting next week. As always, come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.
In the mighty
In the big Ange we trust. See you, everybody.
See you, everyone.